Welcome to the Quick Start video on how to use the G7 or Gospel in 7 app. Now, we don't have time in this quick video to cover all the detail, the theology, etc. You know, the keys to evangelism, what's behind it, why we're saying what we're saying, all that sort of thing. That's covered in a video series that's available on our website, and we've got a manual to go with that, etc. You can even do a small group study with it. It's fantastic for small groups to get up and running with the tool. But this is a very quick video just to get you up and running. So let's go. Under the menu, you've got some information about the ministry and credits and copyright, that sort of thing. You've also got a language option, so you can actually change the language in here to another language if you speak that other language, or you've got the option of changing the graphics only to another language. So let's say you're sharing with someone from another country. English is their second language. It's a bit hard to cross-culturally share with that person. But you can actually set the narration bar in English, the graphic screen in their native language. So when you're going through, you can share still in English because you can't speak their language, but they see the graphics and the text on the graphic screens in their own language. So it really helps with cross-cultural sharing. The other thing under the menu is login details, changing your login details, and we'll talk about that later in this video because you get to register, log in, and then you can actually upload data to the Train to Proclaim website, showing what's happening all around the world, which is very exciting. But we'll talk about that a bit later. Let's have a look at the G7 video. The video is great for people particularly who don't have a lot of confidence to share the gospel, because it does the introduction for you, it does the gospel presentation for you, and then it does the response at the end all for you. It says at the end which statement best describes your response to this presentation. So there's everything from I don't believe it to I want to surrender to Jesus right now, and they can actually enter their email address in there, and then it sends them a customized email based on their response. Now we're going to talk a bit more about that response page at the end when we come to it. Now this is really good for people when you're on a bus or a train or a plane, you know, when you sort of have a bit of a chat with the person next door to you and then they start putting their headphones in, you know, they'll grab their iPod out or whatever, then you can hand your phone over and say, hey, do you want to have a look at a video? Just plug your headphones into this and I'd love to know what you think of it. And then they can just watch it and you can just read a book or whatever you want to do, and then afterwards you can have a chat about it. So it's great for that. The one I'm really excited about is the interactive version. Under the interactive options, you've got long and short versions. Now, this just is determined by how long you've got with the person. When you first start, just use the short version, which is just over 5 minutes, until you get your flow going, and then give the 7-minute version a go, the longer version, because it's very powerful. When you come to instructions, it'll talk about how you can personalize your photo, which is only under the long version. And it actually accesses the gallery on your device. So when you're going through the long version, it actually displays your photos, which looks like your own custom app, which is a great feature. Now you'll notice there's also a video tutorial, which is what you're watching at the moment, and the 7 principles. Now let's go through the 7 principles, because these are really, really important. And if you utilize these 7 principles, you'll have a great presentation. Now the first one is to keep the angle of the diagrams optimal. So you point the screen at the person. So you've seen it before, you don't need to see it, you don't need to do the presentation like this. Show the person. Now you've obviously got to see it well enough to see your narration bar, but primarily you want them to have a really good view, so it keeps their interest. Second principle is the narration bar. Read the words from the narration bar at the bottom, and you touch on the screen at the second to last word, so you seamlessly flow to the next page. Now, if you wait and read the whole thing and then tap, then it's disjointed, because you might be mid-sentence and you've read the sentence, you tap, and then your eyes go to the first word and there's a little gap and it becomes disjointed. So if you tap on the second to last word, your eyes read faster than you can speak. So you'll know what the last word is, and then as you're saying that last word, your eyes are flicking to the first word of the next one, and then you can just start reading straight away. So it's boom, boom, boom. You're just going straight through it, flowing really nicely. So that's a really important principle number 2. Number 3 is point your finger at the appropriate diagrams as you go through to add to the presentation. So people's eyes will naturally go where your fingers are. So when you first start out, you'll just be going read and tap, read and tap. So it's really simple, and your finger won't be going anywhere. But once you know it, well, you know what's coming up, you know what diagram's about to come in, and you can actually point with your finger, which aids to the interest of the presentation. So the 4th principle is practice, practice, practice. Now, You need to do this at least 6 to 10 times just to get your flow going and to before giving it a go with someone. I'd encourage you then to share it with some friends, some family, some church members, just as a practice before giving it a go with your non-Christian family, friends, workmates, and strangers. So principle number 5 is the navigation. Now the navigation is you tap the screen to advance, but you use the back arrow to go back a screen. So if someone asks a question and you need to go back, or if you jump a bit by mistake and you need to go back, you just hit the back arrow. But if you need to go right back to the beginning, if for some reason someone's taxi arrives, or you don't get to finish the presentation for any reason, which is very rare, but you can just tap and hold the back arrow and it goes back to the very beginning screen. Okay, so number 6 is the words and braces, that's those squiggly brackets, are the responses from the person. So you don't actually say those words. So when you ask them a question, don't answer it. But if you say, hey, do you know anyone who's entirely perfect? No, neither do I. It's like, hey, thanks for asking. You've got to allow them to respond. So the words and braces, let them respond. The words and square brackets are optional. So you can choose to use those depending on the person, or depending on whether you like to use them yourself. Last principle number 7, is that emphasized words are in italics. So all the way through the narration, you've got words in italics. Now these are the key points of what you're saying that you want to be able to emphasize, and it also helps you to bring life to your presentation. So you emphasize those words. Now don't go overboard and be really animated with what you're saying, so it's so exciting that it's just over the top, because that's just not going to be good at all. But it stops you being monotone and going through the presentation like this, and it's just really boring. So it just brings some life to what you're saying, and so you can just emphasize more those words, and it'll help you to bring out the point of what you're saying. Let's have a look at the short version. You'll see under the short version that there's 2 options. There's skip quiz and quiz. But if you go back and then tap on the long version, you'll notice that there's more options. There's presenter's name, so you can put your name in there, and that will insert that into the presentation. There's skip quiz and quiz, like with the short version, and there's also personalized photo. Now when you tap on personalized photo, it actually accesses the gallery in your device, and you can choose a photo of yourself, which then goes into the presentation looking like your own customized app. So let's have a look at the quiz now. So tap on quiz. Under the quiz intro, there's options for people who know you and people who don't know you. Now, if this is a family member or a friend that you know really well, you won't even get to this point, because you would have skipped the quiz, because people that you know well, you don't need to do this. The main purpose of the quiz is to get to know people, to connect, to build rapport, and you've already got that with family members, obviously, and people that you know well. But if it's an acquaintance, someone that you don't know very well, and you may be thinking, oh, it may be hard to share the gospel with them, I want some sort of a catch, I want to be able to get into it, then this is a great way to create the opportunity to share the gospel. And also, you may not know where they come from spiritually, and so it's going to give you that information as you go through the quiz. So it's worthwhile doing the quiz with people who know you, but not very well. And obviously, if it's a complete stranger, you need to do this rather than just trying to launch straight into the gospel with someone you don't know. This is a great way to get to know them a bit and build a bit of rapport. You've got to memorize this. Whichever option you're using, you have to look them in the eye and say this. You cannot go, can you help me with something? I'm doing something with my church. Not going to work. You've got to know the gist of what you're saying there. And I would try and do it as close to this as possible, because this introduction really works. And if you do it well and memorize this, and it just flows out of you naturally, you can just use your app at any time. So, hey mate, can you help me out with something? Doing something with my church. It's nothing weird, so you can relax and then straight into it. So you want to know that off by heart. You want to be able to just flow into that. So that's the only thing that you've actually got to memorize. And for the rest of the presentation, you're just reading and tapping. It's so easy. So when you come to the 10 quick questions, you've got a page that leads into it. Now, this is the page that you would show people straight up. So you wouldn't show them the introduction page, obviously, because that's what you've memorized. So you'd say, look, hey, all we do is, and that's your lead into it, all we do is ask you 10 quick questions, give you a score, analyze it. Then for 6.5 minutes, I'll give you the best definition you've ever heard of what a Christian is. Here's the first one, and you're into it. this is a great introduction, and I wouldn't mess with this because it just really works. And on our website, it explains why we say what we're saying in the introduction. It goes through line by line. So have a look at that article on our website. You can see the link below, and that'll explain a bit more about why we're doing this. So then you're into the questions. Now, it's pretty self-explanatory, the ratings, but I would normally just say, look, I give to charities 5 as you always would, 1 you never would. What would you give yourself? And then they can see the other ratings for themselves. If there's a bit of a silence though, you don't want to have silence because you want to fill that out. So otherwise it's a bit awkward, you know. What would you give yourself? See how awkward that is? So in order to fill out that silence, I'd just say, you know, things like Cancer Society, Buskers on the Street, you know, name a few charities so it helps them identify with something. And then if there's still a silence, I'd say, well, 2 is you hardly would, 3 sometimes you would, 4 often would, or 5 you're always giving something away. And so then by that stage, hopefully they'll give you an answer. Now, as you go through, you're just tapping it and rolling it on. Now, if you don't tap an answer and you go on, it's going to come up with an error message saying, please answer the question. So it won't allow you to continue without that. There's a narration bar down the bottom that you can turn on and off, so you don't have to have that on if you don't want to. So all throughout the presentation, you can turn the narration bar off and just hit the text symbol to get it back if you want it on. So once you get to question 3, it comes up with asking what the person's name is. Because with a complete stranger, obviously you don't know their name. You say, by the way, what's your name? Put their name in there, and then you put whether they're male, female, or a group. Now that changes all the he's and hers and they's to the right words throughout the whole presentation. So you don't need to think about, am I talking to him, her, them? It changes all that for you, so it's very clever. Now, all the way through these questions, remember you're trying to build rapport. So as a general rule, if someone gets a high score, I praise them. And if they get a low score, I empathise with them. So if you say, look, I forgive people when they're hurt, and they say 1, you know, or 2, I go, hey, it's really hard to do sometimes, isn't it? So if they get a high score, you go, hey, that's fantastic. That's a lot better than most people. Or it's really, you know, so that's really good. You know, just some praising comments will build rapport with the person. So every question's an opportunity to build rapport, whether it's high or low, because when it's low and you empathise, they're like, you understand me, you get me, you know. So there's a connection there regardless. So once you get to the end of the questions and you've learnt about them, because that actually tells you quite a lot about the person when you look at those questions, that you're learning how good their relationships are with their family and friends, whether they've got unforgiveness issues in their life, how honest they are, whether they're positive or negative, optimistic or pessimistic, you know, like how selfish they are, how generous they are, how spiritual they are, do they read the Bible, do they pray, is there a spirituality to them? So there's all these sort of things. It tells you a lot about the person as you go through the questions. When you get to the end, it adds up the score for you, so you don't need to think about it, you don't need to do any maths, and you just simply hit next all the way through, and most people will come into the good category. There's very few that'll be angelic or saintly or struggling or seek help. Most people go in the good category and say, according to this, you're a good person. Now that's important, according to this, because of course no one's good apart from God alone. And now we're going to contrast what the human standard of goodness seems to be with God's standard as we go into the gospel. You come to this line where it says, now like I said before, I'm going to give you the best definition you've ever heard of what a Christian. And now you said that at the introduction, but that was a few minutes ago, so they've forgotten that. And so it's a little reminder of, you know how I said I was going to do that? Well, I'm going to do it now. And it twigs into their mind. They're like, that's right, you did say that. And then it leads into the gospel presentation. You say, this is also a summary of the message of the entire Bible in 6.5 minutes. It'd be great to see what you think of it. And then you're into the gospel presentation. So when you don't do the quiz, now this is with close family members or friends, you obviously know their name, you don't need to ask them their name, and so it comes to the audience page. Now you put this in before you share with them. So put their name and whether they're male, female or a group in there. Now this page here, you need to decide which introduction you're going to use. Now you can make up your own if you want, if there's one that you want to use, but these are 3 that really do work and work well. The last one's a very heartfelt one and works very well with family members or close friends, because you can express your heart and your love for them and then go into the presentation of the gospel. try to do it in a very relational, conversational way. So as you're going through, hey, it'll be great to see what you think of this, and be very natural. Now, at first you might feel like you're very canned in the way that you come across, but it probably won't sound it to the other person. So you can do it in a very natural way. It doesn't need to be like, I'm going to present the gospel to you now, type thing. Of course, you can put this through a data projector and use it with groups, but it's primarily designed for one-on-one. And now we simply go through the gospel presentation, reading and tapping every question. So remember, as per the 7 principles of the G7, to keep the angle, facing them, to tap at the second to last word so you flow through the presentation well. Whenever there's a word in italics, to emphasize that word so you bring life to your presentation. Any question where there's braces, that's squiggly brackets, you allow them to answer. Square brackets are optional. So remember all the principles, and if you apply them all the way through, you're going to have a really good presentation. When you get to this screen here, you come up to asking them a question if they've ever told a lie. Now, there's a yes button and a no button for a reason, that they can answer either one, and genuinely you press whatever button they say. Now, most people are going to say yes unless they're lying, but whatever answer they bring, then you just keep reading from the bottom. At the same time, you're getting them to personally acknowledge that they are a sinner, so they're taking personal responsibility for that. The next question is, have you ever taken anything that didn't belong to your paperclip or pen? Now, often people will say no, and then you get to the last one, downloaded pirated music, and they're like, oh, okay. So many people have done that with movies or music today, and so then they go, yep, I've stolen something. Me too, so we've all stolen. Have you ever felt hatred towards someone? And again, most people have at some stage in their lives, and you say, well, look, the Bible says if we've hated someone in our heart, it's the same as murdering them in our heart. And so by God's standards, we've also murdered. Now, you'll notice there that it comes to the point there where it's got those 3 things that they've admitted to on the screen. Now, if you were to go back and change an answer to no, you'll notice that another question comes up. Now, this question is, have you ever used God's or Jesus' name in a disrespectful way? So there's an extra question if they say no to one of those. Now, if they say no to that, or if they say no to any 2 questions up at this point, it's got another question that comes up, have you always put God first in your life? And of course that's idolatry, putting other things in the place of God. So there'll always be, another question that comes up if they say no, and then it'll put their sins. And so basically whatever they admit to comes up on the screen, so it customizes their sins, so it becomes very personal to them. Now, obviously it's gentle in that you say, well, I've lied, have you? It's like we're in this boat together. We're both sinners. I'm not saying I'm holier than you. I'm not above you. We're in the same boat. We all need to be saved. But at the same time, they're taking personal responsibility and admitting to the things that they've done wrong. So once you get to the end of the presentation, of course, if you're doing the short version, it's slightly different to the long version, but the principle's exactly the same. You work your way through. Of course, in the long version, you get to see your photo pop up. And interestingly, it's even got in the narration your name, and it draws the date from your phone into the app and puts it into the narration bar. So you don't even need to think, oh, what's the date today or whatever. It just puts it in there automatically for you. It's brilliant. So it's very well done. And then you get to this last page where it says, let me ask you an extremely important question. If you were to die right now, where would you go? And then it gives you a number of options on that page. Again, it's super simple because you simply select the answer that they give you, and then you go to that correct response. It allows for multiple answers at the end. And again, it's just read and tap, read and tap. We're asking, if this is true, where would you go? And the only answer is heaven or hell, or I'm not sure. So any other answer, like I'm going to be reincarnated, or I don't believe in the Bible, don't believe in God, I'm a Muslim, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Buddhist, I'm going to become one with the cosmos, become one with the universe, I'm going to float around and become a ghost. I've heard a multitude of different answers there at this point. So really they're not answering the question, but instead of saying, you're not answering the question, you don't say that. And instead of arguing about their beliefs, because that's traditional evangelism, it's like they're putting their beliefs out, which makes them vulnerable, and they're expecting us to jump all over them and tell us how we're right and they're wrong and why they've got to change. And so in this postmodern, pluralistic, relativistic sort of a world, that doesn't go down well at all. Now, I've been a full-time evangelist for 24 years, and I've made a lot of mistakes in my time, and a lot of the mistakes I've made is by arguing with people. And I don't know about you, but it just seems to get nowhere. The harder I push, the harder they push, and it doesn't get you anywhere. We've got to allow God to work in their heart, and a much more respectful approach is what happens with the G7. Now, when you go to the other answer, it comes to the screen that says, I respect that you believe something different, but if this is true, where would you go? So this is a completely different response to what we traditionally do with evangelism. Instead of launching into the apologetics, we're saying, hey, I respect you believe something different. It's very honoring. It's like we're taking off the boxing gloves and we're saying, we're not going to have a fight about this. We're just saying, according to the Bible, where would you go? So it's like, take off your worldview just for a minute, put on a biblical worldview, and according to the Bible, where would you go? And even an atheist who doesn't believe the Bible at all, doesn't believe in God or anything like that, is still going to say, well, according to the Bible, I'd be on my way to hell. And then he goes away from that and goes, am I sure that I'm right on this? And no atheist is sure that they're right on this. So they're going, I don't want to get this wrong. I mean, the ramifications of this are massive. They're huge. We're talking about all of eternity here, so I don't want to get this wrong. And it puts a seed of doubt in there, and they go, well, maybe I should explore this a bit further. So for me, every person that we're sharing with, it's not a matter of taking them from here to becoming a Christian and, in one foul swoop. It's taking them in one step closer and allowing God to work in their life. Because ultimately He's the one that's drawing people to Himself. Now, this is like a junction box that then takes you back to the same question after you do that, and it then asks them that same question if you were to die. And so they will give heaven or hell, or I'm not sure at that point, and then you move on in the same way from there. So you get to the end of the presentation where it comes to a response. So the person will give their response to the presentation. Just like with the app all the way through, you simply press the button that they choose and then read from the app. So it's super easy, whatever answer they give. Now, it's really exciting when they give the third or fourth answer. When they say they'd like to explore it further, that's so exciting because you can link them in with an alpha course that you've got happening at your church, or exploring Christianity or something. You can offer to have meet with them once a week to have a cup of coffee and read the Bible together, to explore it, answer their questions. This is an opportunity. We're disciples making disciples, so we want to actually take them on that journey and help them to reach the point. Talk about with them. What do you think it is that's stopping you from stepping over the line, from surrendering your life to Jesus? How can I help you with that? And it's not something that you're pushing on them. They're saying, I want to explore this further. I want to do this, so it's something that's in their desire. Now, if they choose the last one, of course, surrendering to Jesus, that's even more exciting, because we then go to another whole section of the app that takes them through 7 hard attitudes. So rather than just say, oh, awesome, pray this prayer now, we want them to know, do they understand the decision they're making? Are they willing to count the cost to be a disciple of Jesus Christ? So it goes through those 7 hard attitudes to make sure they're really willing to surrender everything. And if at any point they say they disagree with any of those hard attitudes, it still gives them the opportunity to put their name and email address in, and it sends them more information and a free e-booklet so they can process it a bit more. But we don't want to take them to a prayer and let them think that they're a Christian and have a false convert when they're really not ready to surrender their life to Jesus. So we want to give them that opportunity to take some more time to do that. This sort of covers every angle, and there's about 6 different endings to this, depending on which path the person goes down. If they do get right to the end, they come to the screen here where there's a prayer. They can either pray it after you, or they can pray it from the screen, or they can make up their own prayer. The most important thing isn't the words that they're saying. It's not a magical set of words that's saved. It's what's going on in your heart, that they surrender their life over to Jesus and they invite Jesus into their life. And that's the important thing. So that's so exciting when you have someone like that. Now, when you do have that, we come to the last screen where it says, They've got their name, email address, and then there's a second email address, and that is your email address that you can put in there. And then when it sends the email, it sends it not only to them, it sends it to you as well. And so it's got both of your email addresses on the email, so you will have their email, they'll have yours, so you can stay in touch instantly from then on. So that's brilliant, because we're disciples making disciples. We're not just sharing the gospel and someone prays a prayer and say, good on you, see you later. We want to actually see that they are going on that journey and going on in Christ. So obviously you'd want to talk with them about going along to a good church, connecting with other Christians, reading their Bible every day, praying, all those sort of things. Now that information's coming via email, but it's great to come from you as well and to have a discussion about that. And if you stay in touch with them, and you might want to say, hey, do you want to stay in touch via Facebook, Messenger, or other methods? Because not everyone's into email, and so particularly younger people these days, they don't use email a lot, but that's an opportunity for you to say, what's the best way to communicate with you and to do it that way. So then we come to the end where it says, have a great day, note to presenter, well done, time to upload your data, encouraging other Christians around the world. Now, when you come to that screen, you have the opportunity of putting the number of people you've reached and what country they're from. Now, when you do that, it then uploads to our website how many people you've reached in what country, and it's recording all the countries of the world, which is really exciting to be a part of a bigger picture, a wider team all around the world reaching people with the gospel using this tool. So you need to register, and it's a once only registration, super easy, and then boom, you're registered. You don't need to log in every time or anything. Once you're registered, you're in, and it'll come straight to that screen there. Now the last screen is it actually downloads onto your device the number of people that you personally reach with the gospel, and that's really encouraging for you, because you may even have a goal, hey, between now and Christmas I want to reach 100 people with the gospel, and you can actually see how you're going and monitor your progress, and so it's super encouraging for you. So that's it. Well, what now? Well, remember to practice. The more you practice this, and the more people that you try it out with as guinea pigs, your friends and family and church, people at church, the better and the more flow you'll have. So when you do it for real, it'll be great. Now, don't be surprised if you share with someone you think is a Christian and they actually say hell at the end of the presentation. Not everyone that you think is a Christian has truly surrendered their life over to Jesus. So just be aware of that. Don't go, what? What are you talking about? Don't be too surprised. Just go through the process. Now, remember the 7 principles, and remember to practice and give it a go. Write to me if you've got any questions, and remember there's more information. There's a manual, and there's videos that go into a lot more detail as to why we say what we're saying, the theology behind it, the keys to success in evangelism. Covers a lot more than this brief video. And you can get that from our website, traintoproclaim.com. You can also use this for small groups. You might have a small group that you're involved in and you want to get them trained up with using the tool. It takes 7 weeks to go through, and just do 1 session each night, and you can practice in pairs, and it's a mixture of encouragement for evangelism, how to share the gospel through the tool, practicing in pairs doing it, viewing live footage, real footage online of seeing it in action, and the theology behind it. So it's a mixture of all 5 of those. So it's a great course. I encourage you to take this a step further than this quick start video. But you've learned enough to give it a go. Let me know how you get on. So how are you going to use the G7 in your life? It makes sense to think about what you're going to use this for, because if you sort of just learn how to use this and then don't know what you're going to do, then if you aim for nothing, you get it every time. So it pays to make a goal and go, you know what, this is how I'm going to do it. Every Saturday morning I'm going to go out and reach people on the street, or I'm going to make a list of all my family and friends, and I'm going to one by one make appointments with them, have a coffee with them, take them out for lunch, do something, and go and take them through this and say, hey, look, I've been learning this new app, can I show it to you? And then, so think about who are you going to share with, when are you going to share with them, how are you going to make that appointment, how are you going to make that that start into the presentation. And when you think about the who, what, where, how, then it's a lot more likely to happen. And put it into your diary. If you don't, I find if I don't put something into my diary, it doesn't happen. So put it into your diary to make it happen. One point I want to make just in finishing is that this is a work of God, salvation. There's nothing we can do. We can talk till we're blue in the face and it's not going to change anyone's life. It's only the Holy Spirit working upon someone's heart, drawing them to God, that this is going to have any effect. So I would encourage you to pray, pray, pray. It's so important to pray because this is God's work, not our own. Jesus is the Saviour of the world, not me. I'm not out there to save the world. I'm just going to pray that God would use the seeds that I plant and draw people to Himself. And the last thing is relax. Relax and let God work. The more relaxed you are, the more you're trusting in Him and in His work, and it just helps you to come across a lot more breezy and a lot more relaxed with the person. If you're all uptight, the person will tend to be uptight, but if you're relaxed, they'll relax as well.